Hello, everyone. Today, let's talk about something so simple, yet so often overlooked: the power of focusing on ourselves. It sounds almost selfish, right? But if we dig a little deeper, we find that focusing on ourselves is actually one of the most selfless things we can do for us and for everyone around us. First, let's get one thing straight. Focusing on yourself does not mean striving for some unrealistic ideal of perfection. In fact, the first step in focusing on yourself is to let go of this notion of perfection altogether. We live in a world that constantly bombards us with the message that who we are isn't quite enough. Whether it's social media, magazines, or even the expectations we set for ourselves, we're trained to believe that we must constantly do better and be more. And all too often, this drive pushes us into believing that if we just fixed this one thing, if we just looked a little better or achieved a little more, then we'd finally feel whole, worthy, and proud of who we are. But the truth is, that sense of enoughness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from accepting what already is. Here's the thing: our imperfections are not mistakes, they're not signs of weakness, and they're not things we need to hide or be ashamed of. They're simply parts of who we are, part of the human experience. When we finally let go of the need to be perfect, we free ourselves from shame and self-doubt. We open up to the possibility of seeing ourselves as complex, complete people with strengths, flaws, quirks, and areas of growth. Embracing imperfection means looking at ourselves fully without shying away from the parts that aren't polished or ideal. It means saying, this is me and this is enough. When we choose to embrace our imperfections, something powerful happens. We stop wasting time on self-criticism and obsessing over how we're not measuring up, and we start pouring that energy into building the life we want. Think about how much energy we lose every day through self-criticism. Every time we judge ourselves, every time we feel we don't measure up, we're chipping away at our own sense of worth. That takes a toll on us, not only emotionally, but mentally and physically too. And by letting go of that perfectionist mindset, by saying, I don't need to be flawless, we free up that energy for the things that actually matter. Now, this isn't to say we should abandon our desire to improve, grow, and evolve. Embracing imperfections doesn't mean settling for less. It simply means honoring where we are right now. It's about valuing who we are at this moment, even if we're still working on becoming who we hope to be. There's room to grow, of course, but that growth doesn't need to come from a place of shame or inadequacy. It can come from a place of love and acceptance, a place where you recognize your inherent worth, and you feel driven to develop and change, not because you're unworthy as you are, but because you see your own potential. And when we accept our imperfections, we allow others to do the same. Vulnerability invites connection. When we're open about who we really are, we send out a message that it's okay to show up imperfectly in life. We become less judgmental, more empathetic, and more forgiving, not only toward ourselves, but also toward the people around us. And that ripple effect is powerful. Just imagine a world where everyone felt that they didn't have to be perfect, that they could just be themselves, flaws and all. So embracing imperfections is more than just a choice, it's a way of living. It's an act of courage, a declaration that you're going to show up as you are, without apology, without shame. We've been taught that perfection is a badge of honor, but maybe it's time to unlearn that belief and adopt a new one: that worthiness is inherent. And it isn't something we earn by fitting into a mold or achieving some ideal. We are worthy simply because we exist, because we're human, and because we're trying our best. Embracing our imperfections means standing confidently in our own skin, knowing that our flaws make us real, that our struggles make us resilient, and that every so-called imperfection is just another chapter in the story that makes us uniquely, beautifully human. Setting boundaries is one of the most essential, yet often overlooked, aspects of focusing on ourselves. When we talk about boundaries, many of us instinctively picture walls, restrictions, or some rigid line that keeps people out. But boundaries are not about shutting others away or isolating ourselves. Boundaries are about knowing where we begin and where we end. They're about creating space in our lives to protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being so that we can live with a sense of peace, clarity, and purpose. We live in a world that often celebrates the idea of doing it all. We feel we need to say yes to every invitation, take on every opportunity, and fulfill every request that comes our way. But every time we say yes to something that doesn't truly align with our values, we're essentially saying no to ourselves. We're giving away pieces of our time, our energy, and our focus to things that may not even matter to us deeply. And when we do that often enough, we start to feel drained, resentful, and disconnected from our own lives. Setting boundaries means taking ownership of our time and energy, choosing to prioritize the things that actually matter to us. It's about recognizing that we can't pour from an empty cup. We can't be everything to everyone without losing pieces of ourselves along the way. And the hard truth is, if we don't set boundaries, life has a way of setting them for us. We might reach burnout, hit an emotional wall, or feel as though we're constantly stretched too thin. Learning to set boundaries allows us to prevent that by being intentional about how and where we invest ourselves. Now, setting boundaries isn't easy. It often means saying no to people we care about or letting go of activities that once felt fulfilling but no longer serve us. And that can be uncomfortable. Saying no might make us feel selfish or guilty, especially if we're used to putting others first. But true boundaries are rooted in self-respect. They're a statement that says, I am worthy of my own time and energy. Boundaries honor the fact that we have limits, that we can only give so much before we need to replenish ourselves. And if we don't make space for our own needs, nobody else will. Think of boundaries as guardrails on a winding road. They don't restrict us from moving forward. They keep us safe as we navigate life's ups and downs. Without boundaries, we're like a car with no clear lane, veering in every direction, unsure of where we're going or why we're heading there in the first place. Boundaries give us the structure we need to stay true to our path, to focus on the things that genuinely fulfill us, and to move with intention toward our goals. There's also a deep sense of freedom that comes with setting boundaries. When we let go of the fear of disappointing others or the need to please everyone, we liberate ourselves. We start to live life on our own terms, doing what feels right and meaningful to us. Boundaries allow us to focus on quality over quantity in our relationships and commitments. When we set limits on our time, we get to choose who and what fills our days. We start to recognize that our energy is a valuable resource, one that deserves to be spent on things that align with our values and goals. And let's be honest, setting boundaries also makes our relationships healthier. When we set clear limits, we allow others to understand where we stand, what we need, and what we're able to give. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about teaching others how to engage with us respectfully. They're about showing people what we value and what we need to be our best selves. Healthy boundaries actually bring people closer to us because they create trust, respect, and clarity. We're no longer hiding our needs or hoping that people will somehow guess them. Instead, we're standing firm, clear, and authentic in who we are and what we can give. Boundaries are also an act of courage. They require us to face the discomfort of standing up for our needs, even if others don't understand. They force us to confront the idea that we can't please everyone, and that's okay. The people who truly care about us will respect our boundaries because they want us to be healthy, happy, and whole. And for those who don't respect our boundaries, that's valuable information too. Boundaries reveal who belongs in our lives and who doesn't. They show us who respects us enough to honor our limits and who expects us to overextend ourselves for their benefit. Finally, setting boundaries helps us reclaim our time, energy, and mental space. When we're not constantly giving in to others' demands or bending over backward to accommodate everyone else, we create space to focus on ourselves. We get to reconnect with our own goals, our own passions, and the things that light us up. Setting boundaries allows us to live in alignment with our authentic selves, rather than living according to the expectations of others. We become empowered to choose what feels right for us, instead of getting lost in obligations and expectations that drain us. So when we think about boundaries, let's reframe them from being barriers that keep others out to being the structure that keeps us whole. Setting boundaries is a profound act of self-care and self-respect, a declaration that we are worthy of living a life that reflects our true values and desires. Boundaries are not only a gift to ourselves, they're a gift to everyone around us, because when we protect our energy and honor our needs, we're able to show up in life with a full, open heart. Owning your story is one of the most powerful acts of self-acceptance. It means fully embracing the path you've walked, with all its highs and lows, its moments of pride and times of pain. We all have a unique journey filled with experiences that have shaped us, some that we might be proud of and others that we'd rather keep hidden. But owning your story means making peace with every chapter, even the messy and uncomfortable ones. It's about standing in the truth of who you are and where you've been without shame or apology. Think about it, we spend so much time trying to rewrite parts of our story or hide them away. We try to correct the things we're embarrassed about to make our lives look a little smoother, a little more polished. We gloss over the struggles, the mistakes, and the times we fell short. Why? Because we're often taught that only the good parts of our story are worth sharing, only the parts that make us look successful or happy. But when we deny the challenging or painful parts of our story, we're denying pieces of ourselves. We're rejecting the experiences that taught us resilience, courage, and empathy. Every part of our story has a purpose, a lesson, and a role in shaping who we are. Owning your story is an act of courage. It's about acknowledging that life hasn't always been easy, and maybe there are parts of your past that you'd rather not revisit. But it's also about realizing that every setback, every mistake, and every heartache has added something invaluable to who you are today. Owning your story means looking at those tough moments, not with a sense of regret or embarrassment, but with appreciation for what they've taught you. It means seeing the beauty in the struggle and recognizing that you wouldn't be the person you are now without those experiences. There's a certain liberation that comes with owning your story. When you stand tall and say, yes, this is me, and this is where I've come from, you let go of the need to pretend. You stop trying to fit into a mold or live up to others' expectations, and you start living in a way that honors your truth. And with that comes an unshakable sense of freedom. No longer are you bound by the fear of judgment or the weight of what others might think. Instead, you're rooted in a deep sense of self-awareness and authenticity, knowing that your story in all its complexity is a testament to your strength and resilience. Owning your story also means taking responsibility for the way your past shapes your present. It's easy to feel like we're victims of our circumstances, like the difficult things we've experienced are chains that hold us back. But when we own our story, we shift from a place of powerlessness to a place of empowerment. We realize that while we may not have chosen certain experiences, we can choose what we do with them. Owning your story means looking at your past and deciding how it will influence your future. It's saying, yes, I went through that and here's how it shaped me, but it doesn't define me. We don't have to be prisoners of our past. We can be architects of our future. And owning your story isn't just a gift to yourself, it's a gift to the people around you. When you have the courage to show up as your true self, with all the layers of your experience, you give others permission to do the same. We often wear masks, hiding behind the facades of who we think we should be, and we miss out on real connection. But when you own your story, you create a space where others feel safe to be vulnerable, to share their own truths without fear of judgment. Your authenticity inspires authenticity in others, and that creates relationships built on trust, understanding, and genuine connection. Owning your story also means embracing the fact that life is a work in progress. It's about understanding that your story is still being written, and there's no need to rush to a perfect ending. When we own our story, we accept that every chapter matters, even the ones we wish we could rewrite. We start to view our lives as journeys instead of destinations, recognizing that the lessons are often found in the process, not in the outcome. This perspective allows us to approach life with a sense of curiosity and openness, free from the pressure to have everything figured out. Owning your story gives you permission to evolve, to make mistakes, and to try again, knowing that each step is part of the greater whole. Finally, owning your story means honoring your unique path. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to compare ourselves to others, to measure our worth based on someone else's accomplishments. But when you own your story, you recognize that your journey is yours alone. You don't need to look to the left or right to see how you measure up, because you're walking your path guided by your values, experiences, and dreams. You realize that the only comparison that matters is the one you make with yourself. Owning your story allows you to celebrate your progress, no matter how small, and to trust in your unique timing. You start to see that your journey, with all its twists and turns, is exactly as it's meant to be. So owning your story is not just about accepting the past, it's about embracing every aspect of who you are with gratitude and grace. It's a commitment to live unapologetically, to let go of the shame or guilt tied to your past, and to step forward as the most authentic version of yourself. Owning your story is a bold declaration that you are worthy, not in spite of your experiences, but because of them. It's a reminder that every part of your story is a vital piece of the masterpiece that is you, and that you are enough just as you are. Practicing self-compassion is one of the most transformative gifts we can give ourselves, yet it's often the hardest one to embrace. We live in a culture that encourages us to be hard on ourselves, to push through discomfort, and to view setbacks as personal failures. Many of us have grown up with the idea that we need to be our own toughest critic to stay disciplined or achieve success. But what we don't realize is that this relentless self-criticism often keeps us stuck. It disconnects us from our own humanity and robs us of the kindness and understanding that we readily offer to others. Practicing self-compassion then is about learning to treat ourselves with the same care and empathy that we would offer a friend in need. Self-compassion starts with a simple, powerful question: would I speak to someone else the way I'm speaking to myself right now? Imagine a friend comes to you feeling down, defeated, and full of self-doubt. Would you tell them they're not good enough? That they're a failure, or that they'll never succeed? Probably not. You'd most likely offer words of encouragement, understanding, and maybe even a reminder that it's okay to stumble and feel lost sometimes. So why, when it comes to ourselves, are we so quick to criticize and judge? Practicing self-compassion means choosing to be kind to yourself, especially when things don't go as planned. It's about recognizing that being human means making mistakes, experiencing setbacks, and sometimes struggling just to get through the day. Self-compassion acknowledges that these experiences are part of the human journey. They don't make us less than, they simply make us human. Instead of berating ourselves for not being perfect, self-compassion encourages us to see our imperfections as a part of what makes us real. It asks us to take a step back, to breathe, and to approach ourselves with patience and understanding, even when we feel we don't deserve it. And here's an important point: self-compassion is not the same as self-pity. Practicing self-compassion doesn't mean wallowing in our struggles or letting ourselves off the hook when we need to take responsibility. Rather, it's about giving ourselves the grace to move forward without the weight of shame or guilt. It's about treating ourselves with enough gentleness to recognize where we are, while still motivating ourselves to take that next step. Self-compassion is both soft and strong. It's an approach that nurtures growth, not by force, but by understanding. One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is that it allows us to create space for our own healing. When we let go of harsh self-criticism, we begin to break down the internal barriers that keep us from moving forward. Instead of letting past mistakes or perceived flaws hold us back, self-compassion invites us to learn from these experiences, to grow, and to move forward with a lighter heart. It gives us permission to forgive ourselves, to let go of the need to be perfect, and to see each misstep as part of the bigger picture. Practicing self-compassion allows us to see that every mistake is a lesson, every struggle a stepping stone, and every stumble a chance to rise with new strength. Practicing self-compassion also means accepting that we're worthy of love, understanding, and kindness regardless of our accomplishments or our perceived failures. Our worth is not conditional on what we achieve, how we look, or how we compare to others. Self-compassion reminds us that we are worthy simply because we exist, because we're doing our best, and because we're human. When we truly internalize this belief, we stop seeking validation from outside sources and start finding a sense of peace and acceptance within ourselves. We begin to realize that we don't need to earn our worthiness, it's already ours. In moments of self-doubt, self-compassion invites us to be gentle with ourselves. Instead of pushing harder, we're encouraged to pause, to rest, and to approach ourselves with a sense of curiosity rather than judgment. Self-compassion isn't about finding all the answers or knowing exactly what to do. It's about holding space for ourselves as we navigate the uncertainty. It's about trusting that even in moments of confusion or fear, we're deserving of our own love and support. Practicing self-compassion means learning to be our own source of comfort and encouragement, finding solace in the knowledge that we're doing our best. Self-compassion also changes the way we approach personal growth. When we're motivated by fear or criticism, our progress becomes a punishment-driven process. We're constantly trying to fix ourselves. But self-compassion changes the goal. Growth becomes a journey of self-acceptance rather than self-correction. It becomes an opportunity to nurture our strengths, to honor our struggles, and to embrace the fullness of who we are. Self-compassionate growth is slower, gentler, but infinitely more sustainable because it's rooted in genuine love for ourselves, rather than a need to improve out of fear of not being good enough. And perhaps most importantly, self-compassion allows us to release the unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves. We often hold ourselves to standards that we'd never impose on others, expecting ourselves to be endlessly strong, constantly productive, and unfailingly resilient. Self-compassion invites us to let go of these expectations and recognize that it's okay to have limits. It's okay to take breaks, to say no, and to ask for help. Practicing self-compassion means honoring our own needs without feeling guilty or less than for not being able to do it all. It's a reminder that we're allowed to be imperfect, that we don't have to have everything figured out, and that our worth is not defined by how much we can endure. Practicing self-compassion, in the end, is about learning to be our own friend. It's about cultivating a relationship with ourselves that's rooted in kindness, respect, and unconditional acceptance. When we show up for ourselves in this way, we build a foundation of inner peace and resilience that no amount of external validation can provide. We begin to find strength, not in striving for perfection, but in our ability to meet ourselves where we are, with an open heart and a gentle spirit. Self-compassion is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the practice that allows us to move through life with grace, to navigate our struggles with courage, and to love ourselves through every step of our journey. In conclusion, focusing on yourself is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of self-respect and empowerment. It's about reclaiming your time, honoring your needs, and embracing every part of your journey, imperfections and all. When you choose to own your story, set healthy boundaries, and practice self-compassion, you build a foundation of resilience, self-awareness, and purpose. These choices allow you to live more fully, more freely, and with a sense of integrity that aligns with who you truly are. So let today be the day you decide to invest in yourself without guilt, to live on your own terms, and to stop wasting time on what doesn't serve you. Remember, when you focus on nurturing the person you are meant to be, you don't just enrich your own life, you create a ripple effect that lifts everyone around you. Embrace your worth, Celebrate your growth and trust that by choosing yourself, you are building a life that reflects your deepest values and dreams.